Welcome back to the podcast and welcome to today's episode with me, Johnny Pardo. Today, I welcome as my special guest, Dr. Val, and we're going to be diving into many things, mindset, naturopathic doctor and what that is, and a lot of Val's story and what she's been doing. And yeah, we'll have a very energizing conversation, I know already. So let's just introduce Dr. Val a little bit. So Dr. Val is a dynamic and inspirational naturopathic doctor, nutritionist, educator, and speaker with over 24 years of clinical experience. Dr. Val has traveled the world learning different forms of medicine, including hypnosis, yoga, and how do you say it? Euphoric medicine?
Ayurvedic. Yeah,
Ayurvedic.
that's the medicine of yoga. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Ayurvedic.
the
Yeah.
medicine of, oh, I love it. She has also advanced her training in acupuncture and traditional Asian medicine in China. So, welcome to the show. Thank you for obviously helping me with my words, Dr. Val. But yeah, it'd be really interesting, first of all, to just hear a little bit about uh, what is a naturopathic doctor for anyone who's not sure on that.
Well, thank you so much for asking because there's a good majority of people who aren't sure what it is that we do, and it's really exciting. So, naturopathic doctors are trained very similar to medical doctors or chiropractors or osteopaths in that it's a medical degree. So you do 4 years of schooling and then you go to school for a ridiculous amount of time. Very similar to medical doctors, we learn how to read blood work, we learn about the different diagnostic tests. We can prescribe certain medications depending on where we are, but our main focus is on nutrition and Chinese medicine and acupuncture and homeopathy, hydrotherapy, herbs. So we use a lot of those, what are termed often as complementary and alternative forms of medicine to treat as our basis. So lifestyle, foods, getting enough sleep, the mindset piece, that's all part and parcel of what we do. Hydrotherapy, massage, get out in nature, all of that good stuff. That's where our training is.
Oh wow, like a good mixture of different like techniques and modalities in your training. So yeah, I just wanted to I'm really intrigued in like people's stories and why it is they do what they do. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, like Dr. Val, because it sounds like you've traveled a lot, you've educated yourself, you train, you're training and you're out there helping people with the work you do. So what really got you into being a naturopathic doctor, getting out there, learning all these trainings?
Thank you so much. One of the things that I love about you and the podcast that you have is that you really want to get to that passion and purpose for people, and you really want to delve into that mindset. And for me, I've always been a very passionate person and very much a spark and go. I call it a spark and go woman. I have this spark, and then I'm like, oh, I have to do that. So it doesn't always happen right away. But
Hmm.
this is basically what happened with my journey. I loved scuba diving and I loved animals and I wanted to go into marine biology. So I went to university for this this degree as a marine biologist and made the fortunate or unfortunate, do you decide, decision to go to a university that taught marine biology that was landlocked. So there was no ocean around. So there was no seals, there was no dolphins, there were no sharks. I love sharks. I'm like, I can't scuba dive. Like you're talking about going and looking under a microscope and wading in a pond. This isn't for me. So I ended up switching to nutrition and loved it. And then I thought, oh, I'm going to study animal nutrition. I can work at a zoo. I can still work with animals. Well, I do work with animals now, just a different form of them. So I ended up at the end of my undergraduate degree being sick. And I went to see my medical doctor, and I would be sleeping 10 to 12 hours. I'd be up for an hour. I'd be exhausted. I'd have to go back to bed.
Wow.
And oh yeah. And my medical doctor was amazing. Just like, so many of the medical doctors out there, they're smart, they're brilliant, they're well trained. So I thought she's going to have the answers. And she did every test under the sun. everything she knew how to do. And she looked at it and she said, everything's coming back normal. So this is just stress. And her prescription was go home and sleep some more. So I'm like, okay, that's called a coma. I cannot do that. So I went to see a naturopath on the advice of my aunt. She said, go see my naturopath. I said, I have nothing else to lose. I went and he looked at me and he said, you're sleeping so much because your diet is wrong. Now you can imagine, I've got an undergraduate degree in nutrition now, and you're
Mm.
telling me my diet is off. This is foods. I
Wow.
was, yeah. And you know how you are a little cocky when you first get out of university and you're like, I know everything. I'm a nutritionist. I know everything. No, but sure enough, it was. We did some food sensitivity testing. I was allergic to life. And so basically I said, look, you can breathe air. And that's no, it was more, it wasn't that bad. But as soon as I took those foods out, my health turned around like that. And my mind was blown. So I just did a 4-year undergraduate degree in nutrition. Nobody taught me this. I went to see my medical doctor, who's been in practice for a long time, and she's incredible at what she does. She's great. She didn't know this. So I was hooked. I was like, naturopaths have secret knowledge. I want to know what they know.
Mm.
And that sparked this whole I'm on a quest for knowledge. So that started me on my journey. And so I went and I studied at the Naturopathic College and then I graduated and then I got out into practice and I said, if my patients just do what I tell them to, I'm going to cure the world and everybody's going to be awesome. And I got into practice and my patients kind of went, I can't really put together, I can't do this. And then I was like, okay, now we've got to do some more research. So then I started looking into the mind body spirit connection. I started looking into hypnosis. What were the mental blocks? Why couldn't they implement?
Mm.
Some people would do it and they'd have these amazing results, and other people couldn't get that traction. So then from there, I decided, someone had told me, hey, I just got back from China studying acupuncture there. And I'm like, I want to increase my acupuncture skills. I want to study in China. I want to know what they know. So then I went off to China and I studied there. And you can be thankful I didn't write down the hospital that I was in, so you didn't have to pronounce that. So I studied there. I was having a ton of fun. And then that's when I also got hooked on yoga because everywhere I went in China, everybody was outdoors in the morning doing their martial art practice. Everybody. And I loved it. And so when I was there, I didn't know martial arts and I felt a little bit too shy to just go and walk up to a group and start doing what they were doing. So I would do yoga in front of some of the temples that were there and some of there was at the West Lake. So it was a beautiful area. So I'm out in nature, I'm doing yoga, and I'm like, I should actually study this. So went on to study yoga, learned about Ayurvedic medicine, which is the medicine of India, of the yogis. And then from there, I decided, hey, I've got quite a bit of information. Now I want to start studying with another yogi who is in Hawaii. So you can see I could write off all of these as a business expense.
Mm.
It's a fantastic career for anybody who's looking. So
I would as well. Write it up.
you might as well. Let's go
Yeah.
someplace warm and write it off as a business expense. And so then from there, I really felt a passionate pull to start teaching. So I started teaching at the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition, the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine, and I supervised there. And then I decided, hey, these students should really learn what a community acupuncture would look like. So we started implementing that. I was the first person at the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine to implement that in my clinical rounds. So that was a lot of fun. And then, so it's all full of passion, right? And then from there, I started to work with a lot of elite athletes. I started to work with a lot of CEOs. And I had the opportunity then to work with an elite beach volleyball team. So I went and toured with them for a bit. I got to go to the Commonwealth Games when it was in Birmingham.
Oh,
I got
amazing.
to be I was the team doctor for an elite level beach volleyball team while I was there. So now I'm at the point where I just want to take what I know and teach it because with everything that's out there, there's a lot of people who want to know what natural herbs, vitamins, minerals, ways of eating, ways of living are going to impact my health and my well-being. But 90% of the information that's out there is wrong.
Mm.
And some of it is quite frankly harmful. And a lot of it's confusing. So the passion has led me to exploring a number of different areas, and that's kind of brought me here to you.
Oh, amazing. No, I can hear on the journey. It's really interesting. Starting from like your diet, and even though you were a nutritionist at the time, or just studying nutrition at university, and then where that took you and exploring all these other modalities like yoga in China. Yeah, it's interesting when the journey takes you sometimes, isn't it? And for me, it's I'm no expert, no nutritionist or anything, but even just someone, I'm fascinated by things like brain health and nutrition in terms of mental health as well. And for me, like, it's crazy sometimes the impact of a food that can have on like me mentally. And I started logging it in a journal. It's like I'm very conscious on things when I log very regularly. And it was just like, okay, I had that food. Oh, suddenly I'm a little bit anxious 30 minutes later, even if it's not so obvious, even if it's not like, a high sugar drink or something. Yeah, maybe I kind of would expect that to give me a bit more anxiety, but it's really interesting. I picked up like mentally what some of the foods would do. I don't know. Did you experience a change in your mental health at all when you changed some of these foods? Because you mentioned about the sleep and then you got some energy back.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you're bringing this up because what I noticed was the sleep. That was the most
Mm,
impactful thing. And
mm,
if you asked me, do you have food sensitivities? I would have said no, because I would have thought, oh, I would have
mm,
digestive upset or something like that. But in once I took those foods out and had them out for a bit, when I added them back in, I could really feel their effects on my body. And yes, my mental health, the next day in particular, I'd get stinking thinking. I could get depression, I could get anxiety, my skin can hurt, I can get a ton of swelling. It's so amazing to watch how the body responds. But until you take that journey, you don't know because number one, you're eating all of those foods all the time.
mm,
Number two, because you've become so numb to it and there's so many of them, you don't, you're not able to tease out which ones do what. I found that for me, it was huge. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's yeah, I've noticed the impact on me as well. Like, I see, like, went out partying most of my 20s. Some good times, but the impact alcohol had on me mentally, like physically. I think most people know, like, not everyone gets it. There's the odd person who never gets a hangover, but physically, or you just could see the impacts alcohol had on like energy. Like people around me would talk about. But then there was like the mental side for me emotionally could get me into really dark places. And it was just, yeah. But then there's foods that can kind of, I'd noticed started to do that as well, but not maybe as dark as alcohol took it. But yeah, wow, that's really interesting how it created like stinking thinking, like you said, when you reintroduced it.
Oh, yeah.
Mm,
Again, for me, I wouldn't get a good quality of sleep.
mm,
I'd get a lot of swelling, especially like in the mucous membranes in the nose. And, the next day I'd wake up and I'd have a food hangover. So if I drank, that was, definitely I'd be getting a hangover. I wouldn't feel well. But there were times where I'd eat food that I was reacting to. I'd wake up the next morning, I'd feel hungover.
wow,
Uh,
that makes sense. Yeah, food hangover. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really powerful. And then you think of blood sugar and depression and anxiety and other mental health issues. There's a real connection with blood sugar levels. Oh, and blood sugar and addiction. Very powerful connection between the two of them, which is interesting to read because naturopaths have known about this. And there's a few little hacks that we have for like, okay, if you're having the cravings, if you have addiction, what can you do to kind of help decrease those cravings? There's a lot that naturopaths do, and a lot of it works on the level of the sugar, especially in the intestinal tract and how it's absorbed. But now they're looking at medications like Ozempic, and they're saying, hey, those weight loss drugs that affect blood sugar levels, hey, they actually can help in addiction. And I'm like, well, okay, yes, they can. Naturopaths have known this for years, and that's why we use these other things instead of Ozempic. You don't have to have the side effects of the medication
Mm.
to get those results. So it's a fascinating world to take a look at the impact of food and blood sugar, and natural remedies and natural products on mental health and addiction, even.
Wow, yeah, very powerful. Dr. Val, I'm just thinking for like I've been in this place, but for the listener who's maybe listening right now, and there's like you've done all these modalities, and in the world there's a lot of information, as you touched on earlier. There's a lot of different like processes and tools. Maybe the person who's like, right, I really want to improve my health physically and or mentally, probably both. Where do I begin? There's so much information. Have you got any guidance for that individual?
Yeah. Now, a naturopath, a really good, well-trained, qualified naturopath would be a great place to start.
Mm,
And I know for myself, I offer what I call a fireside chat where there's no obligation. It's completely complimentary. I know a lot of other naturopaths offer this as well, where you can just sit down and say, okay, this is what I'm going through. Here's what I want to learn. Here's what I want to accomplish. What do you think what are my options? And so a really good, well-trained naturopath, and I say really good and well-trained because there are people out there in other healthcare professions or who aren't in a regulated profession. Like homeopathy in Canada is not a regulated healthcare practitioner, or a practice. So anybody can call themselves a homeopath here. So that's someone who may be well trained, but probably isn't, and they're not a naturopath. So looking at someone who is trained, they'll be able to give you some great guidance and great advice. And that's a fantastic place to start because the quality of information and
mm,
education is critical. There is a World Naturopathic Federation, which is absolutely lovely. So they can help kind of direct you to naturopaths in your area. And again, I particularly offer just a complimentary fireside chat.
mm,
Just, hey, let's meet and greet and chat about that. And those are some places where you can start. But getting a sense of who's trained, who's not, and getting to a regulated healthcare professional, a naturopath that's regulated, would be a great place to start.
Someone can really sort of cut down your journey and help you guide you along that way. Because there is a lot of information out there that can get confusing.
Absolutely. And, I can see why it's confusing because you have one person who's like a vegetarian. Social media is a great example of this. There's one person that I follow and he talks about being a vegan and he loves veganism and all of his posts are all about veganism and he'll post the studies. And then there are other people who are like carnivore or keto and posting information and they're posting the studies and they all sound really good. And the vegan guy and the carnivore guy are like going at it on social media. So it's funny to watch, like from my perspective, because I know the ins and outs. But if you listen to only that one, you're going to get really confused. Should I be vegan? Should I do a Mediterranean diet? The medical community right now loves a Mediterranean diet. But what I'm here to tell you is there's no one right way of eating
Mhm.
for everybody. First of all, that's like we're so different. And there's no one right way of eating for an individual, for a person for their entire life. I know there was a time in my life early on, around the time that I went to the naturopathic college, I actually did become a vegan. I was sort of vegan vegetarian for a good 10, probably closer to 11 years.
Oh wow.
And yeah, and it worked very well for my body. It was very therapeutic. And then what happened is I had some health concerns come up, and my body actually started needing more protein. So I needed to switch back to meat. And so I added in some fish and I became more of a pescatarian, and that worked really well for my system for a period of time. And then my hormones started to shift a little bit, and I had to shift that to bring the hormones back into balance. And then I started training for a half marathon, and I would be like, I would need steak. My body craved meat. And I was like, okay. As I got up into the higher kilometers for running, my body actually needed that meat. So I switched. I listened to what my body needed. And so now it's shifting again just because of my lifestyle and my biochemistry and what's happening around me. That's going to happen in life. And it's not about aging. It's about just the changes in your environment and your
Mm.
biochemistry. So it's really great when you have someone who can tune into that and help you learn, okay, when, maybe your gut microbiome is, needing a little bit extra. Maybe you were sick and you needed a course of antibiotics or several courses of antibiotics. And, that was something that just, it was absolutely necessary and you've done it. And now we've got to bring the gut microbiome back into alignment. We eat differently when we're rebalancing the gut microbiome or when we're rebalancing hormones than we do when we're not. So it's really great to see, okay, what's going on? And then you mentioned mental health. The foods have such a huge impact on mental health. So
Mm.
looking at how your immune system handles the food, how your neurotransmitters are going to be involved with that, what's going to happen with blood sugar levels, like all of those things are so really important. And so to individualize what you need to get your health back into alignment is absolutely critical.
Yeah, it's not a one size fits all. It's like where you are in that time. Yeah, I mean, I sort of half laugh because I was vegan for like 6 years, and then I went back to meat. So it was just like I wish I did my half marathon when I wasn't vegan because I did it when I was vegan. But it was like, yeah, no, it's just like I felt the more things I was doing, I needed more protein as well. So yeah, it's a very similar feeling to you. With that side of things. So what do you do? Like, is there something for your sort of like self-care practice or things you do to relax? Because I know you're spending a lot of time looking after other people, helping them. Is there anything like you find effectively useful at this moment for yourself?
There's actually a lot. And I would actually say that self-care and the mental aspect is actually foundational. And I start my day out with self-care because you can see I'm full of energy. I'm a high
Mm.
performer. I like working with people. I like running at those higher levels and performing at those higher levels. So it's not okay for me to slow down if I don't have to. Now, I will say you have to prioritize rest and recovery. So I make sure I prioritize having times in my schedule where I do take downtime and slow down because it's important to get that counterbalance. But every single morning, I wake up early and the first thing I do is my belief tables, my vision board, my prayer, my meditation, and my exercise. And I get all of that in. And then I make my food for the day and get all of that prepared before I start seeing patients or before I start having meetings. I get that all in. It is a priority, it is a must. Because if I'm not fueled and I start crashing, I can't give 100% to my patients, to the people
Mm.
that I'm supporting, and my health suffers. So for me, that mindset aspect, again, belief tables, vision board, that happens every morning. I make sure that I have my mission, vision, and purpose dialed in, and I connect to it at least, well, definitely every morning, but I try to connect to that several times throughout the day. You just have to if you want to perform at those higher levels. And for me, I'm a very
Mm.
passionate woman. I refuse to perform any less. I don't
Mm.
like it. I don't want it. Not going to happen.
Training yourself every single day, it sounds like. I always talk about the emotional workout that's as important as the physical workout. So it sounds like you got something along those lines as well for every morning and throughout the day as well. So
And
really powerful.
for me, in my experience, so I'm coming up to 25 years of being in practice.
Mm.
And in my experience, I would say the mental piece is actually more important than the physical. And in treating my patients, this is why I started looking into hypnosis and yoga and that mind, body, spirit, because when I have seen patients who have had health concerns, the health concern, I have always seen that there is an emotional connection and lesson to it. So there is an intellectual and emotional message that is and lesson that's being associated with that physical illness. And what I've seen time and time again is if it comes down to the unconscious mind, to the body deciding that the mind, body and spirit are all connected. They're all one. And when it comes down to a decision, okay, do we harm our mental health or do we harm our physical health? The physical health will always take less priority than the mental health. The body would rather harm itself. The mind would
Mm,
rather harm the body than have the emotions shatter and have that mental aspect shatter. So that psychological aspect, the mental aspect, the mental game
mm,
is far more important than the physical. And having worked with an elite level coach, so in going to the Commonwealth Games, I was working with an Olympic level coach named Steve Anderson. We were working with Vanuatu, the country Vanuatu, their women's beach volleyball team. And so the Commonwealth Games is kind of the preparation for the Olympics. And he has won gold medals at Olympics with different teams that he's worked with. So he is an Olympic medal winning coach. And what I saw when I was in Birmingham, and you can look for women's beach volleyball. It was absolutely fantastic, by the way. Loved the city of Birmingham. They did a fantastic job. It was so great. I had so much fun. And what I saw was every single time. So these women are from Vanuatu. It's a country of 300,000 people. It's not very big. There's not a lot of funding. They're up against teams like the UK, like France, like Canada, the US. They're playing all Australia, New Zealand. They're playing all of these teams. And what ends up happening is the other team, their mindset started to go melt down. They're equal players. They're equally amazing. They're all at elite levels, but it was the mental game that made them win because they could reset every time. And coach Steve Anderson was amazing at training these women to manage their mindset. So when you look at who won the medals, who placed in the medals at the Birmingham Commonwealth Games, Canada won first. So Steve Anderson, right before he went to Vanuatu, he coached Team Canada. That's how I got to know him. And then Australia was second. They won silver. And he coached Australia before he coached Canada. And then Vanuatu won bronze. It was all his teams. And they all practiced his mindset, his coaching. And that made all the difference in the world. Was the physical in alignment too? Absolutely. Being their team doctor, I believe we had some really great opportunities
mm,
and helped up-level their performance. But that mental game was the most critical thing.
mm. And that's yeah, I'm a strong believer, as I've sort of touched on, of it being the emotional workout as well as the physical workout for life as well. And yeah, no,
And then you
I
have
love
them.
that
Oh,
example.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
of the Olympics and how much of an impact. Because even like in you see like challenges, when people doing these physical challenges, often it's like the mental side that keeps them going as
Yes.
well. No, it's powerful. No, thank you, Dr. Val. I know there's a ton more value you could give. I know you do give a lot of value, and I know specifically you can work with someone and then help them on their own journey. So yeah, before we wrap up today, where can the listener find you if they want to reach you or find your work or get in contact or book one of those calls? And is there anything that you want to share as a final point today, whether it's something else or just recapping a point that you want to emphasize?
Yeah. So basically, you can get a hold of me. You can reach me at my website, www dot doctor, so drvalfranc.com, drvalfranc.com. I am on Instagram at Valfranc, Dr. Valfranc ND. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. Definitely, you can feel free to reach me at any way. At my website, you can book a fireside chat. I'd love to connect. I am just really excited that right now I have recently launched, along with a wonderful colleague of mine from Texas, 111 days to unbreakable health. So if that is something that people are interested in, it's a 14-week journey where we just talk about some of the basics of health and start to break down some of those myths that are out there and say, let's talk about things like fasting. Let's talk about, how you should be eating. Let's talk about, food sensitivities. Let's talk about all of these different areas of health. Detoxes. Should I do one? Should I not? What's all of this stuff? And we're going to start unpacking all of that. So if people are interested, they can connect and we'll get started.
Oh, amazing. Thanks so much, Dr. Val. Appreciate your time and coming on today.
Thank you so much. As always, it's an honor and a pleasure.
Oh, thank you. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.